Today we're taking a completely visceral, deeply psychological, and entirely chronological journey from absolute zero to extreme wealth. We aren't just going to sit here and look at a bunch of numbers. We're going to look at how those numbers literally rewire your brain. So let's jump right in and start exactly where almost everyone starts.
Picture this. You're 23 years old. It's late, like 11:43 p.m. late. You're lying on a mattress you snagged off Facebook Marketplace, and you pull up your banking app. The number staring back at you is exactly $1,247. You refresh it at 11:44. Obviously, the number hasn't changed. You've got 31 grand in student loans hanging over you, 4,200 on a credit card, and a direct deposit hitting on Friday that, let's be honest, is already mentally spent. But you tell yourself you're not behind.
And that brings us to phase one, survival. Or, as I like to think of it, money is the air you breathe. At this level, you're basically suffocating on tense calculations. You're putting the name brand olive oil back on the shelf, you're splitting streaming passwords. It's just this low, constant hum of math running under everything you do. And that perfectly illustrates the first major rule. When you have nothing, your relationship with money is entirely emotional. Emotional decisions compound, but they compound in the wrong direction. A modest $6,000 raise feels like incredible wealth, until your car suddenly needs $900 in brake pads. Boom, it's gone. Expenses just expand to fill your space. But then, when you finally pay off a $1,200 credit card, you literally screenshot that zero balance. It's a huge emotional victory because a number actually moved based on your decisions.
Okay, fast forward a bit. By age 26, a really critical mindset shift happens. You finally cross the $10,000 savings mark. You've never actually had 5 figures to your name before, and the psychological weight of that cash is massive. But here's the real turning point. You stop thinking about money purely as safety and you start treating it as information. You open up a broker's account, you just stare at it for 3 weeks, and then you finally pull the trigger and invest $1,500. Naturally, the market dips the very next day. You panic, you almost pull the money right back out, actually scratch that, you want to pull it out, but you don't. You decide right then and there that fear doesn't run your decisions anymore. You do.
Moving on to phase 2, building, and specifically breaking salary ceilings.
At this point, you're making $68,000 a year, you've got $40,000 saved up, but you run a 40-year projection spreadsheet and it reveals this terrifying truth. The ending is enough, sure, but it's entirely not what you actually want. You've hit what we call the competence plateau, and you realize a crucial truth. Salary is really just a ceiling dressed up as a floor. The moment that clicks, you start a weekend side project. First, it makes $400 a month, then $1,700. You reinvest every single penny of it, and you absolutely do not upgrade your lifestyle, not one bit. You are finally finding leverage.
All right, let's take a snapshot at age 32. Your net worth crosses $150,000. Awesome, right? But suddenly, there's this intense friction in your life. To keep growing, you have to start saying no to things that used to be automatic yeses. You say no to a destination wedding because you'd have to liquidate stocks just to get there. You say no to a split-cost group holiday where you'd essentially be subsidizing 3 other people. You even say no to a bad business pitch from a well-meaning friend who just doesn't understand cash flow.
What's happening is you're shifting from spending money to maintain your relationships to protecting your capital to build actual options. And you feel the social friction, for sure. People might act envious, or they might be dismissive, but you just stay quiet, you endure the awkwardness, and you say no anyway. This right here, this is the quiet, invisible work of building real wealth.
Which brings us right into phase 3, momentum. This is where assets literally start buying each other.
Around the $300,000 mark, your money starts to develop a personality of its own. You might have a massive $22,000 win, followed by a brutal $9,000 loss. But you don't panic. It's just the cost of being in the game now. The specific threshold is this. Below $500,000, you are still actively buying assets. Above that, your assets start buying each other. The compounding just completely takes over. By age 36, you're sitting on $920,000. You stop sleeping from the sheer intensity of it all, firing off emails at 5:30 in the morning. You even turn down a really safe $200,000 salary because it just doesn't fit the machine you are building.
And then it happens. Your brokerage account updates on a totally random, amazingly anticlimactic Tuesday, and the balance finally reads $1,040,000. You sit there kind of expecting the heavens to open or to feel radically different, but the reality is surprisingly practical. You do the math and realize that $1 million at a standard 4% return is $40,000 a year. That's not total freedom. That is just a starting point.
The millionaire milestone was never actually the destination. It was simply the proof of concept.
That realization takes us straight into phase 4, freedom. This is where time officially becomes your ultimate resource.
Fast forward to the $2.3 million mark. Money entirely stops being a source of anxiety. It simply becomes an allocated resource, exactly like your time or your attention. Let's break down what that actually looks like on paper. Your business is pulling in $4.1 million in revenue. You've got $380,000 in rental equity and a liquid portfolio of $1.6 million. You aren't what they call dinner party rich with the flashy cars. No, you are genuinely wealthy because of what this entire structure buys you: time. You take a 3-week trip and you completely ignore your email for 5 whole days of it. That is something people at lower levels just cannot buy.
Because true wealth isn't just about what you accumulate, it's about what you no longer have to do. The game changes completely at the $5 million mark. You aren't working for capital anymore. You are moving it. You're positioning it. It's like a giant puzzle. You might de-risk an $800,000 return deal by hedging it against another. You are making moves that you quite literally couldn't have comprehended just a few years ago.
As that scales up, we enter phase 5, power. This level is all about reputation and reach.
By $14 million, you're stepping into very serious rooms. You're partnering with a $600 million family office simply because your capital, and more importantly, your pattern recognition, are genuinely useful to them. And this leads to a somewhat cold reality. Above $10 million, your reputation itself becomes a financial instrument. But the distance between your decisions and human consequences widens drastically. Say you're 54 years old, sitting on $30 million. A company you're invested in lays off 140 people. You know the CFO. You've literally had dinner with him. But you don't call. You review the cap table. Margins improve, your position increases in value. You don't feel great about the layoffs, sure, but you don't feel bad for very long either. That distance, that detachment, it happens incredibly quietly.
Because your life now operates as a high-level machine. Look at the structure of this extreme wealth. Your presence isn't even required anymore. You own pieces of 11 different companies. You advise on actual policy. You run an $800,000 a year foundation. Decisions are executed every single day by people using frameworks you built over a decade. And you realize something profound. Energy, not money, is the only currency that doesn't compound.
By the time you cross 80 million, you enter this almost untranslatable isolation. You aren't necessarily lonely, but your context, things like dynasty trusts, regulatory positioning, demographic cycles, it just doesn't make sense to anyone from your past. At this level, money has completely stopped measuring your worth. It's only measuring your reach.
Let's pull way back and look at this complete timeline. It is absolutely staggering. By age 61, you hit a peak of $94 million. You haven't worked a conventional day in 9 years. Yet you can sit down in a board meeting, speak for exactly 4 minutes, ask 2 highly specific questions, and completely reshape a mid-sized economy before lunch is even served. That is power at its absolute most compressed.
But you know what? Somewhere, right now, the loop is starting all over again. There's a brand new 24-year-old checking their banking app while standing in line at the grocery store. They sigh, put the good coffee back, and grab the store brand. They stare at this exact balance, $1,247, and they think this is just a story about money. They think if they could just make a bit more, everything would magically resolve. They don't yet understand the profound, massive distance that's going to open up between the person they are right now and the person they have to become to reach the end of that timeline.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer. The financial machine doesn't care. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just opens every morning and takes whoever shows up without flinching. But knowing the psychological cost, knowing the isolation, and knowing the unbridgeable distance created between your starting self and your final self, is the trade ultimately worth it? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.